What do you like to do in your free time? As you probably know, I get so fired up about making knives. I'd say it's my favorite hobby. Today I'll give you a brief introduction to the process of making a knife. So first thing I'm going to do, it's the most important, probably, is you want to pick your metal. If you choose the wrong metal, it's not going to end up that well because you have a dull knife or one edge, it'll break, something will happen, and it won't turn out very nice. All steels fall into two basic categories, the high carbon steel and the stainless steel. The high carbon steels, there's three basic ones that all beginners use pretty much. It's 1080, 1084, and 1095. The 80 and the 85 and the 95 refer to like the percentage of carbon. And that's kind of important because the more carbon, the harder it'll get. And there's different things that play into that. Anyway, high carbon steels, a very good beginner option because it's really easy to get. You can get it on Amazon. So it's also very easy to heat treat, which is important because heat treated, it'll also become dull, break, something will happen. Anyway, one bad thing about high carbon steel is it will rust pretty easily. And so you gotta take that into consideration if you want to make a kitchen knife. Okay, next category would be stainless steel. You guys are pretty familiar with that. Most knives you buy from a store will be stainless steel. It is harder to get your hands on. It's pretty much the exact opposite of high carbon steel. It's hard to get your hands on, pretty hard to heat treat, but it is pretty resistant to corrosion. Okay, the next thing you want to do when you make a knife is you want to create the knife blank, which is pretty much just like all the metal of the knife. There's two basic ways of doing it, which is stock removal and then you can blacksmith it. Stock removal is the easiest. You pretty much just trace it out on a piece of metal and cut it out with either an angle grinder or a bandsaw. And then you would grind in the bevels and drill the pinholes. Blacksmithing is a lot more complicated, but in my opinion, a lot more fun because you get to hit a hot piece of metal. What could be better? You can do this with anything from flat stock, square stock, round stock, or any other kind of metal you want, any shape. You need some sort of hammer, anvil, tongs, forge. That's pretty much all you need. The next part of the process would be the heat treat. This includes the thermal cycle, which is kind of optional, but it's a good idea to do them. It comes in two parts, which is annealing and normalizing. Which is annealing is pretty much letting it, heating it up to like red hot and letting it cool down pretty slowly. This refines the grain structure and allows for a more even quench when you get to that part. The next part would be the quench, which is heating it up to, well, for 1095, which is what I would use, you would heat it up to around 1500 degrees and quench it in either vegetable oil or some kind of oil. Kind of oil is also important, but I won't get into that. The quench gets the metal really hard, but also really brittle. And so if you drop it too hard or something, it will shatter some of the times. So the last part would be the temper, which is pretty much baking it around 400 for around 2 hours. And this takes some of the hardness out, but also some of the brittleness, and so it's kind of a happy medium. And depending on what kind of knife you make, whether it's a kitchen knife or like a bushcraft knife, you would temper it longer or shorter, just depends what you're going to use the knife for. Okay, the last part is finishing. There is some order to how you do this, but it's not like set in stone. So I usually I finish grinding the bevels, which is like the angle of a knife that makes it sharp. And then I prepare the wood. I use wood for my handles. And you can use other things, but I like wood because it's the nicest. Anyway, you would fit it to the pinholes that you drew up before the heat treat, and then you would fit it together, get all ready. You wouldn't glue it on yet because you don't want to. Anyway, the next would be finishing the blade, and you would typically hand sand this, which is probably the longest part of the whole process, to around 600 to 1,000 grit, depends what you're going to do to the blade afterwards. Some guys take it up to like a mirror polish, which is kind of insane because that takes so long. Anyway, this is important because it gets all like the scratches out, and if you would acid etch it later, it would make it look a lot nicer, because if you have scratches in your blade, it's not very nice. Anyway, final thing would be handle glue up, which is pretty simple. You glue the handle on. You would use epoxy, and you would clamp it together. You don't want to clamp it too hard, squeeze all the glue out. We also want to clamp it enough that there's not like gaps in between the metal and wood. Anyway, you would usually leave that for around 24 hours, let it set up, and then you come back, shape the handle, however you want to do it, hand sand it, get it all nice and smooth, and then you'd apply some sort of oil finish. I use linseed oil, which soaks into the wood and protects it and makes it look very nice. So that's the process I use to make a knife. Hopefully you have learned something from that short speech. I also hope that someday you will get the chance to make a knife.